Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Tarot. Welcome to my channel. So by popular demand today, we're going to have a look at a deep dive of the Mio Im Tarot by Fonsos, New York. So first I want to give an introduction about the creator. So Mio Im is an illustrator and a senior tattoo artist based in Seoul, South Korea. She received a BA in cartooning in Korea and also in communication design illustration in the UK. She's currently receiving her second master's degree in graphic design in the UK, and her work has been showcased in many forms of media. She's an international tattoo artist as well, traveling to New York, London, and more for her work. Now, I just want to add the side note to that bio. So Mio Im is very famous in the tattoo artist world. Her tattoos are actually very much popular and requested everywhere, and the significance of the fact that she travels, well, many tattoo artists travel, for work. They just move from one city to another, and then they find an associated or affiliated tattoo studio where they can perform their artwork. For Mio Im in particular, I have to say that in South Korea, tattoos are not illegal. A lot of people seem to think that they are. They're not. You can get a tattoo in South Korea. However, it needs to be performed by a tattoo artist with a medical license. It seems like it is recognized as a medical procedure, and therefore only a tattoo artist that has a medical license can perform a tattoo in Korea. This means that there's a lot of South Korean tattoo artists that actually can give tattoos only overseas, and you will see a lot of them become famous because they prefer to work out of New York, out of London, and other places like that, for example. I do not actually know whether Mio Im has a medical license. I do know, however, that she is traveling a lot between continents, and her work is just absolutely spectacular. I will post the website, the link to her website in the description box below, just in case you want to check it out. Not just, as I'm going to show you now, the tarot, which by the way comes in two let's say options. One is the full 78 card, and one is the major arcanas only. So if you want to check that out, you will see that in her website there's also a lot of images for other products that she's actually selling. And her artwork is absolutely magnificent. It's very intense. And just a spoiler to this deep dive, because obviously I had to do a lot of research on this deck before I felt like I was prepared enough to go ahead and explain the card and talk about the cards one by one. This is one of those decks that actually changed my view of certain cards. As I said, that's a bit of a spoiler. It's a bit of a sneak peek of what this video will be about. As a tarot reader and a collector of over 35 years, I've noticed that every once in a while, no matter how many years you've been reading tarot, no matter how well you know your cards and other divination systems, there will come a deck, or an artist perhaps, that will make you change your mind about certain cards, or even just one card, or even a concept, a theme, anything related to the way in which you, or in my case, in this case myself, approach tarot, view tarot, and the way in which I organize my practice around tarot. We'll see what I mean when we go into details. So when it comes to the tarot deck itself, we saw the tuck box, and this is the deck. It is rather large. So just to give you an example, this is the introductory card for the Mio Im Tarot, and this is a tarot deck from Lo Scarabeo, which is standard tarot size. So as you can see, it is wider and it's a lot taller. So this means obviously that it does represent a bit of a, I don't want to say trouble, I don't want to say issue, but you need to be mindful of the fact that it is a large size deck. It also comes with this booklet. So this one is actually a, let's say, just a description of the major and the minor arcanas with a few keywords in Korean. Obviously now with Google Translate, it's relatively easy. You just have to scan the words here and hit on text. Well, I have an iPhone, so that's what I'm doing. Obviously, different operating system will have a different approach to the Google Translate. You just have to open the photo app and tap on the text icon and then tap on the Google Translate option. And you will see, it will take a couple of seconds, but you will see, you will be able to access the translation in whatever language you prefer of the Korean part of this guidebook. Or little white book. So about the deck, so I just want to talk a little bit about what I found out doing some research online. Let's say I found through the Association of Illustrators, there was a very short interview to Mio Im about this deck. So the question was, why did you make this work? And her replies, I first started this project back in 2016. At the time, my drawing of the Ten of Swords received a lot of attention on social media, and many people were requesting my interpretations of the full deck. Taking the traditional tarot cards' meanings and illustrations, I created my own version with minor variations. It took 1 year to create 78 cards. However, I do know that this deck was actually published in 2021, so it may have been finished in 2016, 2017, but then, you know, it took another at least 3.5-4 years to actually come to production, come to light. Basically this work of art started with pen and paper, and then it moved on to digital coloring. And after researching the traditional cards and their meaning, Mio Im adapted them to her own interpretations and designs. Each card has an organic meaning to them, different from their traditional meanings as well. Mio Im's Tarot is a tarot card deck as well as an illustration book. And I just want to read from her own website where you can find the option to purchase this deck. So this is a radical vision of what the tarot can be, yet rooted in a medium's form and function. Mio Im's Tarot is a richly complex work of art that took over a year to complete. Mio Im said she did not compose a guidebook for the deck on purpose. So there is no guidebook for this deck, and it was done on purpose by the creator. The tarot deck is more like a storybook than a traditional tarot, and it will be completed with your own interpretation of the card. This is a quote directly from her website. It's got, of course, 78 cards. These measure 6 by 5 inches by 3.225 inches. It's a linen cardstock, absolutely gorgeous, if I may say, if I may add. It's one of those really soft kind of linen, not you know, there's several different types of linen cardstock, of course. This is, I would say, one of the softer ones. It includes a custom box and a full-page keyword booklet in Korean language that we've just seen. Now, this deck, so I had to decide how to approach this deck because it is a very intense deck, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I have been working with this deck before I started doing some research on it, and I immediately felt the really strong vibes that this deck creates every time you read with it, work with it, look at it, and you know, anything that is related to approaching this deck is very, very intense as an experience. So I didn't want this video to be emotional. I didn't want it to be too intense because I think that it is my duty as a tarot reader to be as, let's say, detached and unbiased as much as possible, because when I do a reading, for example, it's true that I bring my own experience, I bring everything that basically constitutes me and my own life and my perception and my awareness of life itself. But it's also true that a tarot reader needs to be able to be objective. This is a tarot deck that constantly fights against your being objective, against your capacity or your will to be completely objective. It's a very interactive tarot deck. It really invites you in, not just to witness what the story is and it's unfolding in front of you, but also because it really elicits some kind of response. You cannot necessarily, you cannot not respond to it. Whether your response is a positive one or a negative one, it's not up to me to say. I will do my best to be, as I said before, as objective as possible, as impartial as possible. But there might be a lot of emotional moments because this deck is one of those decks. So let's start with the major arcanas. I decided I wanted to do an overview first, but I decided that the best way to proceed is just to start talking about the cards. Okay, so we start obviously with the Fool. This is a skeleton. You can tell by the bones in the hand and the forearms, but you can probably also tell a little bit from this sliver that is still visible between the cape and the hat, in which you can actually see the neck, the bones in the neck. So it's a skeleton. It's holding a staff. As a staff, it's dressed with a black cape and a striped pants. It's got a large black hat. It's facing the reader, so we would be kind of saying that it's breaking the fourth wall, but it's actually not, because breaking the fourth wall doesn't necessarily mean, leaning towards one direction or another. In this case, obviously, the one towards you, the reader. But in order to break it, you actually need to engage in eye contact. That is the definition of breaking the fourth wall. There's a lot of actors that have been trained and skilled to look in the direction of the camera, for example, but not necessarily into the camera. So when they look in the direction of the camera, but perhaps a couple of inches on the left or something like that, that is not considered breaking the fourth wall because they're not addressing the reader. So the direction the skeleton is facing is towards us, but we don't necessarily know whether the skeleton wants us to be engaged or not. However, there is no movement. This card is static. If you think of all of the depiction of the Fool cards, you will all remember that it's got one leg up. In many cases, this leg is already over the edge of the mountaintop where he is. It's already, hanging above a void. And there's always movement. There's movement in the dogs, for example. There is this kind of motion in the card that suggests that the Fool is ready to go, and it's just right there in order to be able to start their own new adventure. This card is static. There is a lot of composure. This composure also suggests authority, which is actually, again, quite the opposite of the Fool, because if you imagine the Fool, you will never feel like, suggesting authority. The Fool is someone who starts and they don't necessarily have any kind of experience, and most of the time they're a bit whimsical as well. This is far from being it, so this figure actually suggests, with the fact that it's still, it suggests authority. Now, in this case, what we can see, what we can notice is that this figure is actually, by facing this way, it's either facing a strong light or even the sun, because we can see the shade of the legs, but you can also see the shade of the staff. So it's casting a shadow. What I can tell about the emotions and the feelings that I receive from this deck, because as I forget that there is no guidebook, because the intention of the creator was for the cards to elicit some kind of response in the reader. So my response, which could be completely different from someone else, is that there is a readiness to this figure. There is a readiness to go, which is very common with the concept of the Fool. But it's also a figure that is very conscious of what they're doing, and so far they're actually grounded. This is not a first-time Fool. And by that, I mean, this is not the first time that this fool starts the fool's journey. This is a character that has been through the fool's journey before, and now it's starting again. It's starting from scratch, but it's making treasure all the experiences and everything that they learned so far. So it's a very, personally, I think it's a very beautiful card because it made me look at the Fool in a different way. And let's say that what I gain out of this interpretation in specific of the Fool card is that not all the fools are inexperienced. Some of them are actually, continuing their course in their lives, but they have been around the sun a few times and they know what to expect. However, they still have the courage to go. They still have the courage to take that jump and take that leap and, set the wheels into motion. This to me looks like, even though it is a static figure, the stillness of the figure itself signifies authority and, as I said before, maturity in a way. Now let's have a look at the Magician. So the Magician in this case is a little bit more traditional. Why? Because we kind of we see what the pointers are to the more mundane meaning of the magician, or the person who is doing magic, for example, the person who is doing a magic show, because we see a hat, and inside the hat we can see the suggestion of the wing. It could be a pigeon. As you know, many acts of a magician, they make appear a pigeon as if from nowhere, and same goes with the rabbit, and we can see two rabbit ears as well. We do see an astrological body, what we believe may be an astrological body in the background, whether it's the moon or the sun, or it can also signify the horizon. To be honest, this is, let's say, less traditional when it comes to all of the symbology. We don't have the lemniscate, we don't have the reproduction of the symbol of the minors. We don't have, the actual person pointing up and pointing down with the two hands, but it's still nonetheless a little bit more iconic than the Fool card. And it is kind of easier to refer both, refer back to the concept of the Magician. When it comes to the High Priestess, it's a very interesting character. So it's a skeleton. Again, we can see it from the bones in the sternum here and the thoracic rib cage. So it's holding a sword. You can see the upper part of the sword, the handle of the sword here. The face of the High Priestess is covered by a white veil, as you can see here, and what appears to be a crown at the top with what it looks like 12 pins and crosses. She cannot see, obviously, because the veil is covering her eyes, but she doesn't need to see. There's a wink to the traditional symbology of the third eye, but it's kind of in a more empirical way. So instead of having the third eye, which refers back to the intuition of the High Priestess, we can tell that this figure has the intuition of the third eye, not because we can see the third eye, but because this figure is covered, is veiled, and therefore her sight is not physical. Her sight is from the side of the mind. So the Empress card, in the Empress card, we can see a hand coming out of a full, really grown set of hair. If this is hair, I imagine that it is. But they look like they're composed in such a way that it looks like curtains. So it's almost as if these curtains were parting to make way for this hand to come to the surface. So the hand is just bones and it's facing down. There are a number of rings, as you can tell, in the fingers, and a couple of bangles or wristbands on the wrist. What I'm thinking is that in this case, the jewelry could signify abundance, which is, by the way, one of the Korean keywords on the booklet. This points more to an earthly consideration of the Empress rather than her nurturing nature, her nurturing side. So when it comes to the Emperor, what we see here is a close-up of a skeleton where only you can see the skull is visible, but the rest is covered by a black cape. There's also a crown. The crown has on top of it what looks like, let's say, it looks like an upside down cross. However, it could just be a pin, or a decorative element. I don't want to read too much into it. What I can tell is I can definitely see it could be a sword as well, for example. So I don't want to read too much symbology into this element. What I can see is that the mouth of the skeleton is slightly open. So the fact that we see the crown, obviously it brings us back to the authority of the emperor. Now, the figure itself, with the fact that there's this facing again the fourth wall, and in this case, because it is a skeleton, obviously it's a skull, we can't necessarily see the eyes. We can see the eye socket, and I honestly don't know whether we should interpret that as breaking the fourth wall or not. What I can tell you for sure is that this card is very engaging. It is a card that you cannot overlook. It's a card that when you pull, you need to actually notice it, you need to see it, and you need to have this conversation with the character itself. The fact that it's looking at you, I think it's almost as if it were an explanation of the authority of the card. So it's imposing on you the necessity to look back. So we are now looking at the Hierophant. It's another close-up of a skeleton, as you can tell, but in this case we can only see, and again, the rib cage, and we can see the pelvis. And then obviously the rest is covered in a cape, which is very similar to the pianeta of the priest, the clergy in church. And there's also a pair of long black gloves. We also see a sash on the shoulders. I am not entirely sure whether this is the correct terminology when it comes to clergyman attire, so my apologies. And also because I know that depending on the different religions, there's actually different names. I know that Catholicism, for example, uses a lot of Latin name. That's why this is, for example, a pianeta in Latin, and this is a stola as well in Latin, but I don't necessarily know whether that is the correct name for the in the English language. In any case, if you're familiar with this kind of attire, you will recognize that it does belong to a person, a clergyman. We can see that in this case there's a bit of a mix, because the skeleton is the one of a person, a human being. You can you can see that from many details. However, the skull is the one of a deer or a reindeer, for example, and the skull has got antlers, and it's got a crown of bay leaves around the antlers, and there is a sun behind the character. I want to just draw your attention on the fact that we don't necessarily see a lot of elements, we don't necessarily see a lot of symbols. However, what we do see is very impregnated with symbology and meaning. So obviously in this case, the most important thing to notice is that this figure is holding a heart. Now this is a flesh, it's a heart, it's not a bone. So it's obviously, we don't know whether it used to belong to the figure or it's someone else's, but it's a flesh and muscle and blood heart. And it looks as if the Hierophant is not necessarily squashing the heart, but it's got a really firm grip on it. I want to bring your attention to the fact that it's the first time, so far, obviously, that we see something in the flesh, because so far we've only seen characters that were skeletons, basically. And I think it's very symbolic, because the first thing we can see that belongs to a flesh and not necessarily to a skeleton is a heart, and the heart is the center of the emotions. But the figure is holding the heart, as if it signifies that it's mastering its emotion. It's not overwhelmed by emotion, but it's not suppressing them either. And I think that this kind of balance is very significant for the way in which we can look and we can interpret the Hierophant when it comes to a reading. So I talked about this Lover card in my That One card video, because this is the card that actually made me fall in love with this deck. There's many that I love in this deck, but this is the one card that definitely made me, push the button, let's say it this way. Now, if you haven't watched that other video where I describe in full this card, we can tell that we are in the presence of a person that is still alive and a person that is not alive anymore. What I really appreciate and what actually makes me look at this card in a different way, the Lover's card in a different way, is the fact that there is this string that is actually connecting, it's bridging these two figures. It's bonding them. And it's a bond that, because we have to assume that the person that owns this skeleton hand is a person that has passed away, we also need to assume that the person that is still alive, so the person on the left, has made a choice. This person has chosen to still be bonded with the person that is unfortunately not there anymore. So every time that I see the Lover's card, I'm reminded of the power of choosing. Choosing is what makes us human, after all. And it's also what kind of defines us, because it is depending on the choices that we take in life that we follow a certain path. There is no law, by the way, and I also checked, there are a few laws that, and I don't want to get too much into merit because they come from medieval law and they are quite harsh, especially for women. In some countries, a woman that loses their husband cannot remarry. And let's leave it at that, because there's other things that I don't necessarily want to talk about. And it's also because it's not something that I see in this card. What I do see in this card is that there is, as I said, there is no law, generally speaking, there is no law that keeps you bonded to the person you have been married to when this person passes away. And there's also no religion, again, with a few exceptions, that keeps you bonded. So the till death do us part presumes that when one of the two passes away, the other is free to, for example, seek a partnership and remarry. However, this person has chosen, and the choice has been to keep this bond alive. Now, it's not necessarily a physical bond, and it doesn't necessarily mean that this person will not find someone else, but it is a choice, and it is a choice that transcends death. So I am very, very just blown away by the strong meaning of this card, in which we can actually see the power of this choice that has been a personal one. It's been something that has not been imposed, as I said, by no law, no religion, but it is a personal choice, and it's something that really makes me pause, it makes me think. It's something that actually changed the way in which I look at the Lover's card. So when we look at the Chariot card, we see another couple of skeletons. In this case, we can assume they are animal skeletons. And because of the presence of this horn, we can assume that we're looking at a unicorn, at least this figure here on the right. I don't necessarily know if it goes the same for the one on the left, but I think it is. So they are wearing all the harnessing and the leash. And it's something that, something that, again, really blows my mind is the fact that most of the time when the figures of the animals are, carrying the chariot, or rather pulling the chariot, depicted in the card, you always see them moving. You always see them in movement. In this case, it's quite the opposite. Again, something that really makes us pause and try and work out our own meaning of the way in which the author wanted to express the meaning and our own interpretation of the meaning of this card. So this is quite interesting because at the moment it looks as if they're resting, they're crouching down. It is antithetic to the whole concept of the chariot, because the chariot should be moving. The chariot suggests the possibility of overcoming an obstacle, overcoming a distance, for example, because it points out at travel as well, a journey. But in many cases, there is this really powerful sense of movement. Whether it's a linear movement or an explosive movement, it's different. But there's always that kind of motion in the card. What I recognize in this particular card is the suggestion of a victory, but the suggestion of a possibility of a victory, not necessarily the victory itself. This is the victory, this is the status in which, let's say, we allow ourselves to rest after we have conquered something. We have been fighting and we won, and now we're resting. So the Strength card is really beautiful, I believe. We can see the lemniscate at the top, and when we can see a human hand open and facing downward, as if, you know, it just discarded these two other elements. And we see, for example, a mandible, so the lower part of the jaw in black with some teeth, and the upper part with the skull. Now, it seems to suggest that the human hand is discarding the skull after having broken the jaw. This is what we think may have happened. And this is rather important because the breaking of the jaw can signify overcoming bad words, bad gossip, negative things said about us behind our shoulders, behind our back. It seems to point to the strength of the mind, rather than the strength of, let's say, muscles, or the strength of actions, for example. It's the strength of the mind to find confidence so that it breaks the enemy in two pieces. It's you standing up to whatever has been said about you and showing the world that you can still prosper, you can still win, you can still go on, and to the point that you actually break the opposition. Okay, so when it comes to the Hermit, I really wanted to say something first before we look at the card. There are a few cards in which there's a few scars that may be a trigger for someone. I hope that these cards will be seen as something that has been conquered, something that has been accepted, something that has been processed, and something that has been forgiven. Obviously this video it's not made for kids, but I just wanted to say this because it is something that I have noticed personally a few times, and this comes from the fact that I've had experience working as a volunteer, for example, years ago in a women's shelter. And there were a few women coming in with scars like this. And I'm not saying that these are the scars that I saw. I'm just saying that in that case, when I was volunteering at the women's shelter, those scars were made by themselves, and they were the result of self-harm. I am not saying that these scars reflect that. It could be scars. It could be an exaggeration of a depiction of a scar of someone has been, for example, running through the woods where there's lots of twigs and there's low branches, and you know, at the end of this run, of course, there will be scratches everywhere and scars everywhere, and it is fitting with the concept of the Hermit as well. So, talking about the card, we see a pair of human legs standing on a pile of open black books. The legs have a lot of scars. It seems to point to the failures one has to go through when in the process of learning more about oneself. The fact that the person is standing on top of the books means that they've not just absorbed the knowledge of the books, but they've actually transcended that. So in this case, when it comes to the Wheel of Fortune, we can see an open human eye. It's at the center of 8 wings, and it looks like they are bird wings. 7 of them are black, and one of them has got kind of 3 different colors or shades. And the eye, as I say, it's open, and in this case we're kind of sure that it's breaking the 4th wall because it is looking directly at the reader and it is asking for engagement. Now the different colors of the wings could refer back to the different seasons, for example, and the number 8 could also refer to the Sabbath, so the wheel of the year. Now, when it comes to the Justice card, we have a couple of symbols. So I would say that in this case, it looks to me, at least, as if it were a little bit more traditional, in the sense that we obviously have the scales. In the scales, we have 2 elements. We see on the right scale, we see the heart, and that which is reminding us of the Egyptian tradition. And on the left, we see what appears to be a small jar with something inside that looks to me like a liquid. We also see a carving knife at the bottom, and it looks as if there's a couple of blood stains on the knife. Now, as I said, these are definitely more traditional symbols. There's absolutely the sense of carving, so that sense of finality of justice, because once we get to the stage of having carved out the heart of a person, obviously there's no going back after that. And what I immediately thought when I saw this card, I immediately thought about the Merchant of Venice, when Shylock, you know, the carving out, the concept of the carving out of 1 pound of flesh. I don't know if I'm the only morbid person in this channel, but if you are familiar with the play, because it's a theatre play by Shakespeare, so the Merchant of Venice, has anyone ever thought that you can actually carve out a pound of flesh and still survive? Because, and the reason why I'm saying that is because probably not necessarily from the same side of the body. And I am so sorry about mentioning this. It's just that my mind immediately went there, because I literally asked myself, would I actually survive if, you know, they carved out 1 pound of flesh? And I was thinking, of course, there are parts in my body that are not necessary to survive, and they weigh even more than a pound. So obviously not in this case, because we see the heart that's being carved out. So it's kind of obvious that this person has no possibility whatsoever to keep on living. However, the fact that there is the carving knife here is very suggestive of some kind of finality, some kind of, let's say, a final intentions. There is, as I said, no going back. And that's the way in which we should look at the Justice card, because the moment in which we reach this weighing of the heart is the moment in which there's no going back. It is, as I said before, clearly referring to the Egyptian mythology of the practice of weighing a person's heart to see if they can go to heaven or not. Now, I don't know if, obviously there's a lot of cultures, and I know that many of you have English not as a mother tongue, but in many languages, the expression having a heavy heart is pointing to being, you know, taken by sorrow, having a lot of thoughts, having a lot of worries. And it refers back to the meaning of the heart in a person. So the feeling of being worried doesn't necessarily, it can give you a headache, of course, but doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily feel it in your head. You definitely feel it in your heart. And the reason is because there's a number of responses from your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which you know, act on your respiratory system. Not to make it too complicated, but you may have shortness of breath, and you may have palpitation, for example, if you're having a panic attack, and therefore it looks back at the heart as, you know, the center of the emotions of the person. So we're looking at the Hangman. In this case, it's a skeleton, it's facing away from us, the head is tilted forward, and we can also see, unfortunately, the nose. So this is literally hanged men, not hanging by their feet. There's also a sort of a crown, but it's not a halo. It's more of a halo rather than a clown, because it's not resting on the skull of the skeleton. And it's the fact that it's facing away from the reader means that we can only see the torso, and in this case not the torso but the rib cage. So what I noticed about this figure is that it looks more chastised, punished, rather than in meditation. It is suggesting that the interpretation focuses on the harsher meaning of the card of the hangman. And I'm referring to sacrifice. So the focus is looking away from the reader, which is suggesting, I think, to me, this is suggesting shame. And hanging their head, that's another expression in the English language, for example, when someone is ashamed of something or they recognize guilt, for example, they hang their head. And that is, you know, it would look this way if the person was facing away from us. That's what the skeleton would look like if we looked at this person through an X-ray machine, for example. So this is a rather powerful and strong interpretation of the hangman. As I said, it points to the more harsher meaning of the card, but it's still a very valid point of view. The recognition of the guilt and the acceptance of the punishment. When it comes to the death card, which is generally speaking one of the first cards I look at in order to be able to decide whether I want that deck or not, ironically this death card is not my favorite, and I mean it in the best possible way. So what we see two gloved hands. There is a shading here. There could be, you know, the gloves, and it could be a sleeve. So we can't necessarily be certain 100% that this is not a skeleton, that this is a person. However, we can't tell otherwise either. This person is, or let's say this figure is holding a skull, which is in a way that is looking directly at them. There is this kind of engagement. There is also a rose, I don't know if you can tell here, that is piercing through the eye of the skull. There is some affection that comes out of the way in which the hands are holding the skull. There is care, some kind of care. And if the hands belong to the Grim Reaper, you know, it suggests compassion for yet another person who had to die. So this is a beautiful meaning that I'm giving, that I'm choosing to assign to the card. It looks almost as if there were a loving conversation between the two. I don't necessarily understand what the horns represent, because obviously it's not a human skull, but it looks like a human skull with the only exception of the horns. I don't necessarily understand what this is referring to, but in many cases, if you're a gamer, for example, you will remember there is a game which is called The Shadow of the Colossus, in which the legend said that there were the very first generation of elected that was born with horns after the protagonist of the game had defeated all of the bosses in the game in order to bring back to life his beloved. So this, I don't know, it's just a gamer's mind. It reminded me of that game, and I thought to myself, you know, that there could be a lot of legends, there could be a lot of cultures where there is this presence of the horns, even though off the top of my head I can't recall. What I do appreciate about this card is definitely the sense of engagement with the person that is holding the skull and the skull itself. There is this gesture is a kind of loving gesture, and I really do appreciate seeing the Grim Reaper as you know, doing this kind of thing and being appreciative, and also perhaps being sorry that they had to take this life. So this is the Temperance card, and I have to say that this card really gave me pause, in the sense that I had to do a lot of research on this card to make some sense out of it. To me, Temperance is the card of communication, is the card of movement, is the card of going back and forth. It points to that kind of balance and equilibrium that has to be restored after the transformation of the Death card, and also before the all bets are off of the Devil card. So it's the card in between. You need temperance. You need a temperance card in a Fool's journey, because it does correspond to some stages of the Fool journeys in which you have already gone through a transformation after your sacrifice. However, you're not entirely ready to graduate and to complete your journey. So the Temperance card gives you that possibility to have a bit of a break, assess your situation before you actually fall for the Devil. The Temperance in this case, let's just describe it. It's a skeleton. Again, you can tell from the bones on the tibia here, and I think it's called the Homer bone. It's crouching on what looks like a door frame. This looks like a door frame to me. The head has antlers again, and it's also covered by hair, but we can see from the fingers definitely, and the tibia, as I said, that it's not a living human person. It looks as if the character is defeated. It's prostrated. It's half in, half out of this door frame. And I think that this points to the ebb and flow of the card. That's the one thing that I actually recognize as symbolic and traditional. The way in which it hangs perhaps half in, half out reminds me of the movement between the water that goes from one cup to the other in the traditional depiction of the Temperance card. So I think that this element actually alludes of that meaning. The character is in two worlds. So the character Tempera is needed by both, and that's why she cannot completely cross. I'm saying she, but there's no gender obviously for Temperance. So let's say Temperance cannot completely cross the threshold from one world into the next one, because it's still needed by, let's say, the old world, and it's needed by the new world. And it's the role of Temperance to bring back some sense of balance. But what really stops me here is that it looks as if Temperance is defeated. So has it failed? I always wonder how a figure like that can actually withstand being between death and the devil. And it's like it's being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And while, as we said before, traditionally is meant to give a bit of a respite before the big strong energies of the two following cards, the Devil and the Tower card, we never really stop considering the monumental effort this card goes through. Now we can actually see the way in which the figure is exhausted, because it is pressed by these two worlds. So when it comes to the Devil card, we see the upper torso of a skeleton again. It's still covered by a black cape. So we can still see the horns, and to be honest, we can't see much else. It's in the center of the frame. There is a kind of a needle, well, I think it's a needle, sticking through the hood, but we don't necessarily know whether it's coming out of the eyes or not. We don't see that. So I think that the fact that the character is almost entirely hidden, it may suggest that there is an actual non-existence of the Devil, or it's kind of negating the empirical aspect, the physical aspects of the Devil, the way it has been depicted traditionally. So it's almost as if not assigning a face to something, we could imply that this something assumes different faces for each and every one of us. Whether for one person it could be a vice, it could be drinking, it could be smoking, it could be anything that represents something that puts us in chains. For another person can be completely different. I feel strongly that this card is depicted in the right way by not showing us what necessarily is depicted in other cards. So the vice in itself, but not showing, for example, the sensuality that is traditional of this card, the vice that is depicted here that makes us fall for it, that makes us, slaves of the Devil. It could be anything. It could be something that actually works for us, something that we fall for, something that we fear, something that we that puts us in prison, and not necessarily everyone else. So the star card seems to be relatively simple. We see a human spine and it's severed at a certain point. And we can assume from the meaning of the Tower card that this part is solid. There is a foundation that is not disrupted, that is not falling apart. And the rest is. So we are reminded, even though the symbols are not traditional at all, I should say, but there is a little bit of a wink towards tradition in the Tower card. When it comes to the Star card, we see a human character which is facing away from the reader. They're tilting their head forward. They have a bob haircut, and this haircut actually shows the back of their neck, where we can see at the center of the spine, we can see a star. Now the star is interesting because it's not up in the sky like it usually is in this card. It's actually within ourselves. And it's important to notice that this is a deliberate choice, and as such, it should be considered as symbolic. We're used to look up to see the stars. The protagonist of this card, the character, is actually looking down. It's, let's say, one of the reasons why we're looking up at the stars is because we usually associate the stars with support, with healing energy, with also the support and the help from the ancestors or someone that we loved and is not there anymore. In this case, we don't see that. That's why, as I said, the opposite, the figure is actually looking down. So in this case, even the creator thinks that the healing power of the star is in ourselves, as we can see here, because it is on the back of the neck of the person. Or we can also interpret it by saying that the ancestors we look up generally when we look at the stars are actually within us. The figure is looking down, again, not up. There is no heaven. That's something that is quite strong for me. It does not point to the fact that we can look up at the stars and feel like we're going to be saved. We have to find salvation within ourselves. So when it comes to the moon, as you can see, it's a rather simple card. We see it looks like a circular black graffiti that is leaking down a few streaks of black paint on a reticulated kind of, it's either a net or a wall. I'm not necessarily sure. On the left though, there is, I don't know if you can see it obviously, but on this side, there is a bit of paint that actually falls away, and it's almost a lighter kind of patch rather than the black of the rest of the moon. This suggests a slow reveal. What will be under the paint is not clear because we can't see, but if we are patient, there is a suggestion that if we are patient enough, we are going to see it sooner or later. So now it's not the time for action. It's the time to be patient. It's the time to wait and see what we can discover. It's the time for intuition, which is always referring back to the symbology of the moon in the traditional interpretation of the RWS. Whatever time we had, to act and take action and do something and set ourselves emotions is actually over. This time is over. And what comes next, we don't necessarily know it yet, but it doesn't depend on us anymore. We just have to wait and see. So this is the sun card, and we see the upper part of the torso. We can only see barely the bones here at the top. And we have a really clear, unequivocal sun at the center in the solar plexus of this character. There is the traditional element of joy that is brought by the very strong light, but in a way it is sobered down a little bit because it's still definitely powerful enough. This is one of the brightest elements we have seen in a card so far in the major arcanas. But it's a more considerate type of joy, and it's not the stupid folly of the joy we can see in some interpretation of the sun card. So when it comes to the judgment card, what we can see is a skull, which is pierced by 3 knives and is served on a platter by what looks like a human character without a head, So these are hands without bones, so obviously it looks as if they're covered by flesh, so we have to assume that this is an actual person, not a skeleton. However, we do not see the head. So we can assume, let's assume that it's a person. So a person is serving a skull pierced by 3 swords or knives, you know, on a platter. Honestly, this one also gave me a little bit of to think about, because the serving on a platter suggests, you know, reverence. It's something that you do with respect. But it's on the other hand, it's also something that needs to be exposed, isn't it? Something that you show to others. It's on display. And what I'm thinking is that this particular skull, which has been pierced by 3 swords, is almost as if it were an example. So if this is the angel of judgment, let's say, let's call it that way, it's showing humanity what the beyond will mean. And it's almost as if it's referring back to the traditional symbology of the card, in which, you know, there is this advent, there is something that comes to the surface finally, and it's something that is not necessarily expected, but that we know that it was there all along. Now, so when it comes to the last of the major arcana, we see the world, and we see a large, what I believe is a sun, a large sun, and these are lines that look like painting line. Now, I have to say that the first reaction for me was to immediately think about the Scream by, which is a painting by Edvard Munch. And if you're familiar with the Scream, if not, please Google it, because it's very powerful. The reason why I'm referring back to that painting is because it is very similar. I'm not saying that that was an inspiration. As I said, there is no guidebook, so I cannot possibly know that. This is just what it reminds to me. It's a beautiful painting, very powerful, very intense. And this is a beautiful and very intense card. I think that there are so many layers as there are lines in this card. They represent the different possibilities we are always facing whenever we are making our way to the end of the Fool's journey. No matter what we choose, there always is a sun illuminating all of the choices. And that's a really beautiful way to terminate, to conclude this journey of the Fool throughout the major arcanas. Now, this was a very deep dive on the major arcanas. When it comes to the minor arcanas, I'm just going to go a bit quicker because I don't want everyone to stay here for hours. And it's also because, believe it or not, they actually are, the minor arcanas are actually, let's say that they don't detach themselves too much from the literal interpretation or the depiction of the cards in the traditional RWS system, even though the symbols chosen to represent them may be completely different. Let's have a look. Let's start with the Suit of Wands, although there's not much to say, to be honest. We see an antler and we see a lot of leaves growing out of this antler, signifying that perhaps this is more like an antler slash branch. So we see the protagonist of this card, again, holding these antlers or branches. I like the fact that they're pointing down, but the grip is very firm. And, it reminds me of that kind of grip that you have on the world of the traditional Two of Wands, where you hold the world in your hands and you see that it's becoming too small for you. And so you're starting to think about something else because you need to evade that world. The Three of Wands again shows the antlers, but in this case they are interconnected. And in this case, I really believe that it refers back to the fact that on the Three of Wands you set your wheels in motion. Everything is interconnected, everything makes sense, everything is ready. Now, when it comes to the Four of Wands, this is a bit of an odd one, and I had to really look at the card to understand what it's showing us. So this, to me, looks like a slice of a cake. and there's a feeling, but I don't know, it might be just me, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure, but these look like fingers. Okay, so there's a feeling, and these look like fingers, and they are intertwined, these fingers, and there's 4 branches that grow out of the cake. So there is this intertwining of the fingers that suggest that bond that, you know, needs to be celebrated with the cake, because it's the bond of the community, it's the bond of, you know, after the growth of the 3, we actually make our union official. And, you know, you have been setting your sails off to an adventure, and on the 3 of Wands and on the 4 of Wands, you're actually still celebrating that new adventure you've taken. Obviously, on the 5 of Wands, the 5, numerologically speaking, is always an element of the stabilization after the consolidation of the 4. We see here a person, a figure that has several tattoos that look like symbols. They look like sacred geometry in many cases. What we can notice is that the antlers are still there. So there's a number 5 antlers. And what we can see from here in specific is that these antlers are actually growing out of the person's back. This seems to suggest that the traditional destabilization of the number 5, where you see the competition, etc., is actually a personal competition, is something that is born within ourselves. When it comes to the 6 of Wands, we have, generally speaking, we have the incarnation, the crowning, but we don't necessarily see that here. What we see is a trophy though, because this is the typical hanging of a trophy. You can see here also the plate. In many cases, it can be seen as some kind of success, in the sense that it's seen as a prize to be given by the conqueror or the hunter. The 7 of Wands is always signifying the one against the all, one against the other, sticking to your guns, surviving criticism, going ahead and try and, you know, make sense of everything that has happened. I like the fact that the 7 of Wands always coming after the 6 of Wands gives you the impression that perhaps the celebration of the 6 of Wands was a bit premature. So when we look at the 6 of Wands, that was a trophy, perhaps we have to deal with the fact that we have not entirely defeated what, you know, all of our enemies. The 8 of Wands, that's a bit of a, it looks almost as if it were the opposite again of the traditional depiction of the 8 of Wands in the RWS, because we do not see the movement, we do not see and we don't feel the sense of movement, the sense of speed, for example, the sense of something coming or going away or arriving. However, what we do see is the branching out. So these are antlers or branches, and we see that they're going in different directions. So there is some kind of spread that we can see, the spreading of the branches themselves, that can refer back to the 8 of Wands. For the 9 of Wands, we have a figure sitting on the antlers or the branches. Now, the 9 of Wands is traditionally the card of resilience for me, in which we acknowledge our wounds, that we acknowledge the fact that we have perhaps been hurt, but we keep on going, we keep on giving, we keep on advancing. Again, in this case, it seems as if the emotion that is suggested by the 9 of Wands, generally speaking, is not present in this card. However, we still feel the sense of being overwhelmed, of being hurt, or having been through something. And the 10 of Wands is almost entirely traditional. Obviously, the branches being, you know, antlers, they come out of the head of this person, but we can definitely see them as those 10 wands that in the traditional depiction of this card, the person is carrying on their backs. In the Page of Wands, we see the energy, we feel the emotion, the spark, the magic of this baby deer. I figure, because we know how strong the legs of this animal is, and so therefore we can imagine, you know, the animal itself jumping or running. And that definitely is reconnecting back to the traditional symbology and the meaning of the card. We have the Knight of Wands, which is not emotion, it's not conquering, and it's not, riding an animal, but they are definitely holding the handler in a way in which perhaps we can expect that sense of defense that the knights incorporate in themselves. The Queen of Wands, which is the archetype of the performer, what we can notice in this case is the way in which we have both aspects of humanity. So we have the bone, on the arm, but we also have the flesh on the arm. And what I really, really appreciate is the fact that you can tell how much love there is in the way the person is holding the head, of this deer that has the antlers. And when it comes to the King of Wands, we see this looks like a crown, which is very minimalistically surrounding the two antlers. Now we jump into the Ace of Cups, the Suit of Cups. So the Suit of Cups has been, as an element of cups, we have skulls. So the whole suit will show you throughout skulls for each and every one of the cards. In this case, there are red flowers which look like roses on the top, resting on the top of, as like a crown on the top of the skull, and the hand of the person holding the skull itself. What's beautiful here is that I want to believe that there's always that kind of bridge between the Two of Cups and the Lovers cards, in which we can definitely tell that there is this person that is still alive, or we assume that is still alive because it's got still flesh on their covering their bones, and then there's obviously the person that is not alive anymore because we can see the bones on the hand. Now it looks almost as if both these hands were actually in the process of trying and catch these two skulls that because of the I assume blood that is coming out of the eye sockets, it really conveys the sense of falling. So these two skulls have been either discarded or thrown away, and there is the motion to save these two by both the hands. The growth, numerological growth of the number 3 is displayed here by the additional element of the person that is dead. So this is another card that is extremely intense for me and still reminds me of the Lovers card. This is the outcome of that choice that we were talking about when we looked at the Lovers card. So the fact that there is, let's assume, and again, I could be completely wrong, but let's assume that we're looking at 2 alive persons and 1 that is passed away. The fact that there is this really kind gesture of holding by the person that has passed away, and there is this union and this bond that is newly formed by the 2 persons that are still alive, really brings back that concept that there is still a bond between one of these 2 and the person that is not with us anymore. It's a choice, and it's a choice that actually transcends death, because death is seen as something that is part of life. So I really, really like the way in which I can see the card playing out this way. Then we've got the 4 of Cups, where we see what I see here is kind of the futility, if I can tell, if I can say, of the action. So this is not pointing so much to the restlessness of the 4 of Cups, in which you've been offered everything is at your feet. You even have an additional cup offered to you, but you look at them and you're restless, you're bored, nothing actually works for you. And that's the traditional way in which we read the 4 of Cups. In this case, I really feel the futility of those offers. The fact that everything that is in front of us, symbolized by these skulls, because we have 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, they're on the ground, and nothing is important to us at the moment. We're it's, if this is a baseball bat, obviously there's a few nails sticking out of it, but the concept is to throwing it back. So if something is offered to us, we actually throw it back. We don't incorporate it with us. We don't accept it. We don't receive it. We don't treasure it. So there is that bridge between the two, the meaning of the two cards. So the Five of Cups is forming a circle around of skulls around this person that is covered with a hoodie, and they are also crouching down. I also very much like this card because it really gives you the idea of your own loss. So the fact that in the Five of Cups, generally speaking, we have at least one or two cups that are still upright, and the figure is looking at the ones that are tipped over, and the liquid that has been spilled gives us the interpretation of someone who cannot move on from a loss. So crying over spilled milk is useless, don't we know that? We still do it, obviously, because it is a loss and it is the suit of the heart and the suit of the emotion and the feeling. So obviously we still feel the pain for the loss that we went through. However, this card seems to be telling us that there is no way forward unless we acknowledge it. And I really, really like that, because in many, many cases we will be tempted to think that because there is, you know, a bright future ahead, there is that bridge that takes us to different adventures, for example, to the brighter and bluer skies, we tend to move on a little bit too quickly. The Five of Cups in this case tells you that you cannot do that. You need to process that loss. And the Six of Cups looks as if we were, you know, there is a hand of, it looks like a baby or a child in any case, which is obviously referring back to the nostalgia of a time in which, you know, nothing was hard, everything was easy, and we didn't have any worry because we had our parents worrying for us. So we look back with nostalgia to those times that were simpler times. And this is, to me, looks like a toy box. Like, obviously there's a couple of toys in here, we can kind of see them. And that's kind of a very traditional way to refer back to that meaning of the Six of Cups. This is rather traditional as well, I would say. There's this figure which is, you know, looking ahead, away from us and ahead of them, and the Seven Cups, and they are in this undecided because they cannot necessarily see what is good for them. And the Eight of Cups is, okay, you know what, I can't decide, nothing really appealing to me. Everything is broken. I'm just deciding to leave what's broken behind. I'm packing up my suitcase and leaving. It's interesting to notice that this looks like the, where is it? The box, the toy box that we've seen in the Six of Cups. It's almost as if, yes, we were leaving because the suitcase is packed up and clothes are ready to go, but we still don't want to let go of that sense of security that we had when we were children. And the Nine of Cups. Now, the Nine of Cups is, to me, it's a very positive card. What signifies for me is the wish come true, but it's also because it is the moment in which you understand, it's not yet the Ten of Cups, but it is the moment in which you understand that when you're enjoying something by yourself, it is time to actually give back to the community, to rejoin, to rekindle the community. And I really do appreciate that last second, that last, you know, very short time in which you're still by yourself, the wish has come true, you're rejoicing for that, but you also realizing that if you have no one else to share your joy with, it just doesn't make much sense. And so this is an offering. I choose to see this as some kind of an offering, holding the 9 cups / skulls on the character's hand, but this is an offering to someone because it's not going away with these skulls, with these cups. It's offering them to the reader. And we get to the Ten of Cups, which is a very sober kind of card. So as much as I see the 9 as a joyful card because something is going well, let's say, This is a very sobering kind of card for me. This represents 5 white skulls and 5 black skulls. And this to me is the opposition, is the understanding that after you've received what you wish for, yeah, and you understand that you need to offer part of that to the community because that's the only way in which you can rejoice. You also understand that there's something coming after the culmination of the journey, something that starts again after an ending. There is always a beginning because we are in a circular motion, not a linear one, but it's also signifying that together and beside the good, let's say the brighter moments, there will be also the shadow moments. So this is the Page of Cups, which looks like a so I don't know whether it's clear or not, but these are 2 legs, and the legs have a few tattoos, and one of them is a spraying can, and one of them is a band-aid, and I think one of them is a knife that is dripping blood, and I don't necessarily know what this is. What really looks interesting to me is that this page is not knee deep, but almost knee deep, because they're rolling up their pants into this black liquid, whether it's water, because obviously it's the suit of water, the element of the suit of cups is water, or not. But in any case, they are submerged in a liquid. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is a skull. This is a skull. So it really represents the let's say the beginning on the evolution of the suit of the courts. The court cards are always relating back to the element of the suit they are part of, but to different degrees. So a page is just the beginning. A page is often a child, and whether it's a child by anagraphical age, or a child by experience of lack of experience, it doesn't matter. It's still someone that is very new at something, and so we only see the feet, I imagine, and the ankles, in the water. Then we have, almost as if we were witnessing a jump back to the traditional depiction of the knights. So the knights are wearing a armor, so they signify someone who's going to war. Even though I have to say that in this case there's this flower here, and again, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a really nice touch because it does refer back to the suit of cups. Yes, it is a knight, so obviously there is a sense of movement, there is the sense of conquest, but there's also the sense of bringing us back to the suit of the heart. The Queen of Cups is that character in the court cards that has achieved the mastery of their own emotions, their own feelings. It's not at the stage of the king yet where, it's almost as if they understood that this also needs to be shared with the community and it needs to give back. But it's at the moment in which there is that sense of awareness that we have actually mastered these emotions, and that is, I think, is beautifully depicted by the way in which the queen is holding their hands on top of the skull. And this is the motion of the king. So the king is submerged in water to the point that there is, I think, water dripping from their cape, and they're holding the skull and they're moving away from us because they know that their role is actually to go back to where they come from and share what they have learned. Now, when it comes to the suit of swords, if you watch my channel, you know how important this suit is for me. It is the suit of the mind, and the air is the air, the element, is the air, which is practically 90% of my birth chart. I have so many planets on the element of air that it's uncanny. So I always pay a lot of attention to this suit because it's a kind of a deal breaker for me. If I don't resonate with the way in which the suit of air or swords is depicted, then let's say I have to think twice before acquiring a deck. No spoilers. Well, let's have a look at the suit of swords. So we have a very, okay, just a disclaimer, this is a very strong suit, so there might be some triggering cards again. Perhaps skip ahead, or maybe, you know, it's up to you. I'll leave it up to you, of course. There's nothing graphically violent in the sense that violence is not necessarily clearly expressed, but it is implied. Okay, so that you could please be warned about that. So the Ace of Swords is obviously the suit of the mind, but it's also the suit of, you know, talking, expressing. It's the suit of words. I love the fact that swords, if you take off the S, it's left in words. This is a negation of words. Why? Because when you're you know, if you have a knife going through your throat, it's, imagine, never happened to me, obviously touching wood, but, well, actually I did, because I did have a surgery, but in any case, I imagine it's very difficult to speak. And to be honest, going back to my surgery, for I think a month and a half, I had problems speaking, because any kind of surgery that goes close to the vocal cords will affect them, obviously. So we have the do not speak in here. We have the do not see in the Two of Swords. This is more traditional because obviously the character is blindfolded, like in many cases on the Two of Swords. But to make it even worse, we have two knives that are actually, you know, hitting the eye sockets. Now, I'm not 1000% happy about the way in which the Three of Swords has been represented, because this is, although this is traditional, obviously you have the Three Swords piercing the heart. What I like is that there is still this sense of own dominance by the hand holding the heart. So it's not a floating heart. A floating heart is very impersonal to me. Whenever I see this kind of depiction of the Three of Swords, I am tempted to think that it's nobody's heart. It's a symbolic heart. The way in which I read the Three of Swords is always related to numerological meaning of number 3, which is, you know, in the representing growth, and in the suit of the mind, because generally speaking, we talk about a lot of words, and so we see the natural progression of the suit. So we have the impossibility to express ourselves, and I can't, you know, not think about the throat chakra in this case as well. Then we can also not take, we are incapacitated and we can't take a decision because we cannot see, we don't have the information necessary to take a decision. And we feel the anxiety mount, and we feel, you know, this continuous demand for control that we experience, and that is constantly frustrated by the fact that we don't know what we're seeing. And this is so intense that we actually get to the Four of Swords, in which we just collapse. And I love the way in which the hair is spreading out like that, because it suggests a moment in which we couldn't hold it any longer, and we just literally just collapsed onto the bed, because that was the only thing we could still do. Now, the Five of Swords, personally, I always refer to the Five of Swords as the gaslighting. The gaslighting, someone has been telling us things that are not true, eliciting a reaction in us, which is actually to fulfill their own hidden agenda. And it's something necessarily wrong that puts us in a very dire situation. There is a lot of conflict in the Five of Swords, simply because the 5 is a number of destabilization, but it's also because it's almost as if we were just walking by the rest that we needed, that we fell into after the 3 of Swords. We fall into the 4 of Swords, and then when we wake up, we find out that something has been done while we were sleeping or resting. We are not entirely sure what this is, but we kind of believe everything that we hear, and we are confused, but we feel like we've been stabbed in the back. And so what we want to do is revenge. However, there is this 6 of Swords, which is my second favorite card in this deck. In some cases, it's probably my favorite card. This is the card that shows us, it's the Six of Swords, and it's the kind of, the tradition behind this card is embarking upon a journey that is very hard on ourselves, but it's a journey that we need to make in order to reach a better shore, so better outcome. There is a better future in front of us, even though right now we can't really see it. Most of the time it's because the figure is actually turned towards us and not towards the direction in which the boat is going. Now, in this case, there are no boats, but what we can see is that there is a sense of motion, and it's a liberating sense of motion because this figure is actually walking on the top of the swords and holding a flower. It signifies to me that you're stepping on your own thoughts, you're putting them to rest, you're choosing to ignore them, because let's not forget the anguish, the anxiety we come from on the previous cards. So we do this journey because we cannot ignore the swords. They are under us, but we are using them. So it's not like we're not delusional. We're not in denial of what we're thinking, of the worries that we have. We use them. We accept them. We are aware of their presence. We use them in order to move on. That is a wonderful card. To be honest with you, it's probably my favorite Six of Swords, although I have to say I have a few favorite Six of Swords. Now, the Seven of Swords to me is the card in which you have been put in such a dire situation and position that you had to do something you normally wouldn't do. So whether you're stealing something, it's because you are hungry. If you're stealing food, it's because you are hungry. You don't necessarily, it does not define you as a character. It defines, however, the act of doing something wrong. And there is this sense of hiding. So the figure looks as if they're hiding something behind their back, but there's also a, let's say, a wink to the Two of Swords, in which these two swords are crossed at the front of the figure. So they're basically incapacitated to move forward. They have to steal these remaining stakes, I don't know what they are, because the situation commanded so. The Eight of Swords is very traditional, I would say. The Nine of Swords is somehow very traditional as well. Of course, we have a figure that is not laying down. It's just standing upright, but there's still 9 swords pointing at the person. And even the 10 of Swords is rather traditional, in which we see the person that has been pierced by the swords. This person has wings. And it really gives you the idea that there would have been that flight. There would have been that kind of taking off had there not been these swords to, push the person down. However, it's also a figure that is not completely laying low. It's not entirely defeated. There is the sense and the possibility that they may be able one day, perhaps, to pick themselves up and try and fly again. So the Page of Swords, again, gives you the idea of the very beginning of the court cards in the suit. Even though to me, the Page of Swords is the detective, is the one that asks why, ad infinity. And I don't necessarily see that here, but that's not a deal breaker for me. It's not necessarily something that I cannot read. The court cards are... There's a lot of ways to read the court cards. It can also be an indication of time or a message. A message is arriving, for example. The Knight of Swords is, again, riding. I like the fact that it points out to the skeleton. It could be referring back to the 2 skeleton of the unicorns that we saw in the Chariot card. There is, again, the sword, and there is this sense of movement. Now, when it comes to this, I have to say that I just did not entirely understand this card, although I do understand I see the meaning, but my understanding of the card is more on an intuition level rather than, let's say, a symbolical level. I understand that it is the Queen of Swords, and the Queen of Swords has conquered in the court cards, obviously has conquered that mastery of her thoughts. So we've seen the whole suit of swords is about understanding that you are worried about something and being able to not succumb to your thoughts and your fears and anxieties, but being able to use them to your own advantage. The Queen has reached the point in which she's actually culminating into that. She has definitely achieved that potential and that mastery. What I don't necessarily understand is this. I don't necessarily know what this is. If any of you has this deck and you have an idea, please let me know. I can see a couple of bones here, the vertebrae from the spine, and it's almost looking as if this were a mushroom. So it looks almost as if the mushroom was actually growing out of the severed spine, because this is a severed head. It doesn't look like it's blood, although I'm perfectly happy if someone tells me no, it's actually blood. I'm okay to believe that, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm actually asking you because I spent a considerable amount of time, meditating on this figure, but I still cannot really understand what this is. So if you know, please, let me know in the comments below, because I'm very interested. And the King of Swords, obviously, with the crown and the sword. And the last suit, so is the suit of the hearts, which is reflecting the suit of the earth as the element, or the suit of pentacles or coins, as we, think about. And there is nurture, is that link to the nurturing of that suit, but it's also the return to nature, that is symbolized in the suit. So there's two hearts. One is stylized and it's dripping ink, and one is actually a human heart. Now, in this case, it does point to some kind of duality of the two, which I like. This is the work, you're setting your wheels into motion. There is the growth in the suit of the heart, in the suit of the earth. Sorry. The only thing is that I don't see any kind of collaboration or cooperation, which is something that I would normally look for in the Three of Pentacles. But there are three hearts, and you don't necessarily know. Perhaps there were other two people that actually painted these two, and you're doing your own job. That's the important part of this card, is to understand that you're supposed to be doing, bringing your own contribution with your own skills to the teamwork. And in the Four of Hearts, we definitely see and we feel this sense of consolidation. Unfortunately, when we look at the numerological meaning of the number 4, which is consolidation, attached to the suit of the earth. So earth is already a very stable element. Consolidation and stability, unfortunately, can become stagnation. So for me, the suit of coins, when it comes to the number 4, points to stagnation, which is never good, because when you know that when you're referring, for example, to a career, or even to an investment, for example, consolidation is good, stagnation is bad. Stagnation means that you're not making any money when it comes to a financial endeavor, but it's also because if you're looking at your career, for example, you're not making any progress, you're not making any advancement, you're keeping everything to yourself, and sometimes you should probably relinquish that, to be able to go ahead. Now, I love these two together in the sense that first we see how much you're holding on to your things, and then we see what happens if you don't grow. You lose everything, which is the 5 of Hearts. In the 6 of Hearts, that's very traditional, so you have this exchange between the two. I always like to point out that the 6 of Hearts, 6 of Coins, is the giving and receiving. It's not necessarily just one party that gives something, but there's always an exchange of energy. Now, when it comes to the 7 of Hearts, to be honest with you, I don't necessarily see, other than the traditional symbology, that there is this kind of vine growing with the fruits, and the fruits are the hearts. But other than that, I don't see anything that would remind me of the 7 of Coins, which is the moment in which you are assessing the direction you've taken in order to be able to understand if you need to pursue this path or not, but I could be wrong. When it comes to the Eight of Hearts instead, we definitely see all the tools that let you go ahead in your enterprise. The Nine of Hearts is generally speaking a windfall. So a windfall, I don't want to, obviously this is a windfall for the crow. So the crow is very happy because they received so many, let's say, hearts that they're going to feed themselves with. So obviously that's a windfall because, you know, it's going to be with a full stomach for a long time. And the Ten of Hearts, and that's, you know, the culmination of the Suit of Hearts. I mean, this is rather peepish. Obviously, we don't necessarily see a lot of symbology, but there are 10 hearts on the card. And looking at the Page of Hearts, we see the same kind of depiction on the court cards, in which we see a little bit of the element when it comes to the very first, let's say, start of the evolution in the court cards. So the page only has a little bit of the heart, and they're holding it in their hands, and they probably even look like they don't necessarily know what to do with it, which is a knowledge that progresses with the Knight of Hearts. In this case, we see a shield that represents the permanence of the in this suit, and there's the permanence of the Knight of the court card. Now in this case, we see the archetype of the soldier, in the sense that the soldier is wearing the shield, is something that protects the soldier from the attack of the spears and the arrows and the swords of the enemy. So it's not, even though we don't see a person, but it's rather traditional. Again, the Queen of Hearts is the nurturer, and we definitely see the healing properties of the fact that, you know, this person is sitting. I don't know if you can tell, but these are the knees of the person. So this person is sitting, and they're nurturing this heart, and they have the heart on their lap, so they're kind of tending to it with care and love, which is very typical of the Queen of Hearts and the Queen of Coins. And then again, like we've seen, very consistent with all of the other kings, we see the way in which the king is depicted with the crown around the heart. Now, we've seen all of the cards. What I just wanted to do, last is I'm just going to do a short, quick reading with the cards, and then we're going to have a look at a couple of decks I want to pair this with. So it is a rather large deck, so in my case I can only shuffle it overhand this way. I don't necessarily mind, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shuffle it because it was in order, and I'm just going to jump back into the video, editing the shuffling out. Okay, here we go. So it's just going to be a 3 cards pull. Okay, we talked about consolidation and stagnation with the 4 of Hearts and the 2 of Swords. And the 4 of Wands. Okay, so this tells me, first and foremost, it tells me that the consolidation that we are choosing to opt for in this case, so whether this is a reading referring back to a career choice, for example, or a financial project, anything related to something very concrete, we are keeping everything to ourselves. We're not sharing anything. We're kind of stable, but we are too stable, because as we have seen before, the 4 of Hearts or 4 of Coins, for me, you know, combines the element of earth and the numerological meaning of the number 4, which is consolidation, which becomes then stagnation. But this stagnation that we brought upon ourselves is necessarily due to the fact that we did not have any kind of information. We found ourselves in a situation in which we did not know where to go, whether to take one direction or another, and therefore this is when we don't know where to go, we just double down on where we are. You know, if we don't have enough information, if you're trying to take a decision, you end up not knowing anything, you end up actually staying where you are. So this is a result of the fact that we did not know what to expect. We did not have, as I said, enough information on where to go. What these cards, the evolution of these cards seems to be telling is that we need necessarily to, there's another sword, there's another 4 here. So, but the 4 of Wands is a very dynamic element. So the element of fire with a stable element, which is the number 4. So ironically, the number 4, the 4 of Wands is actually a very good card in the sense that it brings a kind of a harmony. It's the celebration that we reach thanks to the fact that we see ourselves as part of a project. We are, you know, in many cases is, for example, the celebration after a wedding, because there is that kind of acknowledgement that we are part of something bigger than us. So it seems to be telling me that I found myself in a situation in which I really didn't know what to do. So I'm actually doubling down on what I have. I'm not sharing anything because I don't trust anyone. This is an encouragement to actually go back to an atmosphere, to an environment in which everyone that surrounds me is part of myself, is part of my, you know, my family, my tribe, my friends, my collaborators. Anything that makes me feel like there are those 4 walls that actually protect me, to the point that I want to celebrate that. So it's a relaxing time. Go back to that sense of familiarity that you lost here because you couldn't see it, and that made you kind of frozen. So that was a very quick reading, but as you can tell, it's always a very intense experience. And now for a couple of pairings, which are not what you would expect. So I found that this deck, the Mio Im Tarot, pair up really well with the Energy Archaeology Oracle, which is this one. And then instead of using, again, the Mio Im and just split it in 2 and put it on both sides of the Oracle, I've actually chosen to pair it with the Yokai Yochi Tarot, because it really feels like these 2 decks have a lot in common. And what I was saying in a couple of videos, I also like to pair it with the Cursed Auguries, because it looks as if the Mio Im were the child of, you know, the Yokai Yochi and the Cursed Auguries Tarot. So these 3 decks together, I think that the match is really good, because it's almost as if the colors that are present in the Energy Archaeology Oracle would act as some kind of a bridge between the 2 decks. So we've got the Yokai Yochi on the left here, which has a very muted color palette, and we've got the Mio Im Tarot on the right, which also has a very muted color palette. However, there are every now and then a few cards that have some kind of color. So when it comes to aesthetics, these 2 could use some kind of a bridge in between them. What I also really appreciate is the fact that, as obviously, as you know, the nature of the Energy Archaeology is to refer back to the bones of the body. And when something like that happens, you see the kind of conversation that these 3 decks are having. So there's always a bit of an echo coming out of the 2 tarot decks that is actually more specified. It comes to the ground, it comes to an understanding, thanks to the way in which we look at the Oracle deck. So if, for example, we see a lot of similar elements between the 2 tarot decks, we can always try and understand what the relationship is between these elements, thanks to the keywords on the Oracle deck. Just to give you an example, we've got sternum, as you can see here, with vulnerability, and I don't know if you can tell, but there is a person crouching on the sternum, so on the sternum of the skeleton. So we got vulnerability between the Tower and the 4 of Cups. Obviously, this refers back to the vulnerability we feel after a Tower moment in which everything has collapsed because it needed to, you know, but we kind of feel lost in this sense. We feel like we don't necessarily have anything in front of us that looks appealing to us because we lost everything, and so we feel vulnerable because we are exposing our heart to this Tower moment. And and you know, and protection between justice and the Four of Hearts. Now the protection is definitely the card that refers back to the Four of Hearts or the Four of Coins, in which you are literally just keeping everything in your ribcage because you don't want to share anything. So you see the elements recurring, we see the ribcage again, for example, and we have justice, because justice, as we said before, instead is the kind of movement, is the kind of coming to terms with something that is not necessarily moral, but it is legal, and you are forced to follow that. So you want to protect yourself from something that is, you know, coming into effect. And the responsibility between Judgment and the Four of Wands, you see how these three together are incredibly powerful, but they're also very simple and linear. It's almost as if the Energy Archaeology Oracle will give you the possibility to continue your reading in a very linear way from the Yokai Ochi into the Mio Im, because there is responsibility coming with Judgment, but there's also that rejoicing and the way in which you find yourself surrounded by the safety of the four walls, and so on. So these are really beautiful together. It's something that I honestly did not expect necessarily, because when I pair up a couple of decks together, I always try and find a way to deepen their meaning, in the sense that perhaps, I don't know, perhaps the Mio Im is, I don't know, is very dark, so it needs a lighter kind of deck. And then, you know, I find that in an oracle. And I was a bit worried because the Energy Archaeology is not necessarily light as an oracle deck. But in this case, it actually does a really good job, because it does become lighter. It does give you the possibility to explore a deeper meaning, you know, in the cards from both the decks. So again, with the skull, for example, that's such a beautiful, it's a very beautiful combination. I really feel like it's, you know, talking, it's almost as if it's so conducive of a conversation between the decks that you're just the person that is pulling the cards, you know, you're just a card slinger. You're not necessarily the one building up the message. You're the one listening to the message, interpreting the message, and relaying it back into the world and towards the person that you're reading for. So another couple of examples here. And the last one, we've got giving between the Seven of Cups and the Ten of Cups. Now, this was it for today. It was a very deep dive into the Mio Im's tarot deck. As I said to you before at the beginning of this video, I really have the impression that this deck really changed my mind on a few cards, but I'm very much interested to know what you think about it, if you have this deck or if you're looking into it, because it is a very unique deck. And, you know, I know that the price point makes it so that it's a unique deck in the sense that not everyone can buy. I was very lucky to find it in a Facebook group, so I did not pay the full amount for it. Perhaps, you know, you can just try and reach out in a Facebook group, and perhaps there will be someone else that wants to part way with it. But in any case, I'll be very interested to hear your opinion, because it was kind of requested by a lot of you in the comments when I show you the unboxing. And so thank you so much for now, for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.